But yeah, let's talk a bit about your like one of the topics that you speak a lot about is like the nuclear family or like the need for the nuclear family
Hmm.
or a family around people. Like, what is it that makes you look at the world and say like this is one of the biggest issues?
Um, it's funny because one day I was thinking like how Ibram X. Kendi says that basically like it's not a matter of if there's racism, but where there's racism. So I'm always like, it's not a matter of where the nuclear family fails, it affects our society, but it's like how it fails and how it's affecting our society. So I believe that most of the social ills that we're discussing, when we were talking about children who are experiencing some sort of trauma, dysphoric, there are links to where their household.
Mm.
Not saying that I'm a child of a single parent, so I think sometimes what happens is people say, "Well, you turned out fine,"
Mm.
or they say, "Well, I know this guy. He's a doctor and he's happy." I try to explain it like if you smoke cigarettes, it's not a guarantee that you'll get cancer,
Mm.
but smoking cigarettes increases your chances of getting cancer. So growing up in a single parent home doesn't mean that you'll go to jail.
Mm.
Doesn't mean that you're going to kill yourself. But growing up in a single parent home increases the likeliness of those things to happen. It increases the likeliness that you get involved in crime, that you get involved in drugs, that it's such a long list
Mm.
that it's so absurd that sometimes we have to debate it. Like I know we can play with numbers and stuff like that, but man, if I can show you a correlation between a particular lifestyle and family upbringing and negative life results on a consistent basis over and over and over, you have to say at some point, okay, maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something there. So, the nuclear family increases the odds that you will have a happy and successful life. And then it increases the odds that you will repeat that behavior. One of the things that we don't talk about is when you do grow up in a single parent home and you turn out to be okay, that is a normalized environment for you. And sometimes, actually, even if you don't turn out to be fine, that is a normalized environment for you. That's your lens of how you see the world. So if you're a young woman, you grew up in that environment and there's no man in the house, right? So that means that there's no male authority figure. So you also have the first and most important man that you're supposed to depend on, you couldn't depend on, so he wasn't there.
Mm.
So now, how do you move about in life from there? Probably resentful of men. Probably don't expect much from men. Probably waiting for that man to let you down,
Mm.
which is why you feel like I have to do for myself in case, right? It is always that fear leading into relationships with other men. It is always that disrespect when it comes to male authority figures, right? I see it over and over. At what level is a different story. And the same goes for men. When you grow up in that household and you're surrounded by a female authority figure and there's no male authority figure, that is especially dangerous for men because I try to explain to people as a boy, you are energy, right? You're full of energy.
Mm.
And part of your upbringing is to teach you how to moderate your emotions.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you can hurt people. Even if you're not trying, you can hurt people. That is why rough and tumble play is something that kids should experience because it teaches them boundaries. The people who hurt other people, the people who would shoot into a crowd, the people who would do all types of insane activities don't respect people's boundaries. They don't even respect their own boundaries. They have no control over their emotions. And they are willing to go from 0 to 100 just like that because they never learned how to control that. So it's interesting when I hear people say, I'm a hothead, right? And then you look at how they
You're
grew
super
up.
calm, man.
Oh, no, not me. I'm just saying like,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Jenny.
yeah.
Okay.
Just like someone was like, I'm a hothead. But you look at how they grew up and you're like, oh, I get, like, no one was there to teach you how to moderate your emotions or to say, hey, you've gone too far. You need to chill out. There's a reason why my son is super calm. Maybe part of it is genetics, but like when he would get excited, a little bit too excited, I was there to be like, no. And he's like that today. He's not too high. He's not too low. He's very even. And that is where I think a lot of men should be, right? Because if they're too wild, they're dangerous. And if they're too wild, they hurt people. They can hurt people emotionally. They can hurt people verbally. Like they have to have some control over their emotions. So I mean, we can go in all different directions as far as why a male father figure within the house is important. One last thing I will say, and I'm trying to talk about it more, the statistics around having a non-custodial figure living in the house or being exposed to children within the house. So let's say a stepfather coming into the house, and likeliness of that child experiencing sexual abuse or physical abuse is tremendously high.
That's so, like what? That's a like it's something you kind of hear about, but like what the fuck is going on there?
Well, the way I try to explain it is sexual predators will go where there's children. And so when we have a society filled with single women, and those single women obviously want to have relationships, so that means that they have to find the guy who's willing to accept them with their children. And there's going to be predators in there. And I'll say this, I was doing a podcast. It was like 3 guys who were part of it. And I was explaining this very thing of what will happen. And after I was done explaining it, the one guy said, yeah, you basically explained my childhood. Because that's what happened to me. He was molested by a stepfather. Wow. And it was like to the T of how I was explaining it. I was like, this is the reality of things. Single parenthood is a vulnerability for children in all different types of ways, but even sexually, right? Where predators will find single women and go after the kids and then get the mothers emotionally involved. And there are times when the mothers pick the man over the kids. So it's a terrible situation. Yeah.
Wow. It's like, so I'm also a child of divorce. Was like 13 through 16 when the divorce was going on. And my best friend used to say to me, like, you really lacked, like, maybe like half your problem is like you lacked a male authority figure in your life, or you lacked like a masculine authority figure to like teach you like about life, basically. I used to just be like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, why do you need that in your life? And then the more that I begin to understand like what that means, like what kids get from that, and the more I figure out the stuff that I wasn't taught, essentially, and the stuff that I've had to figure out for myself since then, and had like other people like, help me along the way, like books I've read, like things I've seen, like Jordan Peterson was probably the first step along that for me. It was someone like who really like lays it out there in like a very unequivocal manner as to like why you need like to, especially as a man, to learn, like he's like, because it's like you're a monster, like become that monster and then learn to tame it. That's basically like what you were saying there about men not needing to be too wild. It's like the capability for that wildness can be there, but you have to have the self-discipline to tame that. Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.